the Houston Texans, by cutting J.J. Watt, they now have $10 million in cap space. They can cut Brandon Cooks. He would free up $12 million. And David Johnson, he would free up $6 million. They can have $28 million in cap space this offseason. Their coaching staff is pretty good. David Culley's their head coach, but you got Lovie Smith as their DC, Tim Kelly as their OC, and Pep Hamilton is their quarterback's coach. This is a pretty good staff. Now, they have 24 pending free agents, but because the Texans were so bad last year, there are only a few that are worth keeping, in my opinion. Garyon Conley, Will Fuller, and Vernon Hargraves, and the list ends there. And for me, I think they will re-sign Will Fuller. Will Fuller totally tanked his value in free agency when he got suspended. Any team that signs him is not going to have him for a while because of his suspension. Because of that, I don't think he's going to get a big payday from any team. I think he remains with the Texans. I think Vernon Hargraves goes because he wasn't good last season. I think Garyon Conley stays. And Lovie Smith, he runs a Tampa 2 scheme. He had a top 10 defense 4 times in Chicago. And just recently when he was with Tampa Bay, he had the 24th ranked defense, but the offense was a 29th ranked offense. So there was a reason why there was such a disparity. And in my opinion, like, they're going to run a 4-3 front. Because of that, I think some notable free agent guys can be Trent Murphy, Solomon Thomas, Derek Wolfe, Takaris McKinley, Carl Lawson, and Trey Hendrickson. Because of all the negative press that they've gotten, I don't think they're going to land a top guy just because of all the negative press. But then you look at cornerback, I think Mike Hilton, Mackenzie Alexander, William Jackson, Kevin King, and Desmond King all make sense. And they can go either way. I mean, I'd like them to bring in Trey Hendrickson personally or a Carl Lawson. And at defensive tackle, they could bring in Adam Butler, Sheldon Rankins, or Dalvin Tomlinson. There are a lot of different directions, but I think the Texans are another team that have to be all in on just trying to improve the defense or the offensive line.
Yeah, for me, I just think the most important thing this offseason, I mean, looking at the free agents, I agree with you. Pretty much all of them can go. I would look at bringing back Garyon Conley, would be the only name that I would personally bring back. And if you were insistent on not trading Deshaun Watson, I think it's important that you work on bringing Will Fuller back because you know the connection they had this past year. They seem to play really well together. So that would just be another an asset that you could keep in the building to entice Deshaun Watson to stick around. They haven't done a very good job of that so far, but that's one move they could make positively to try and keep him around. I just think the most important move of this offseason is what they're going to do with Deshaun Watson. If you go in one direction and you're going to decide to call his bluff and try and get him to show up, then you better do everything in your power to make him happy, whatever it may be, however you have to get back on the same footing. That's what you got to do. But I think it might be wiser to just cut your losses while you still have a lot of value in your hand and trade him off. I think the Jets, I'm not trying to sound like a homer here, but the deal that they can offer with the number 2 pick, you get to select your future quarterback. You're probably going to get at least 2, if not 3 or more first-round picks on top of that moving forward. That, who knows? I love the Jets. They have great assets this offseason, but they haven't built anything yet. So that first-round pick next year, if you get the Jets' first-round pick, could still be a very high first-round pick. You look at the Texans with Deshaun Watson this year. That could be the Jets next year, and you could be looking at 2 top 5 picks back-to-back years, and immediately your rebuild is launched. And on top of that, they brought in Pep Hamilton. We saw what Pep Hamilton did with Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. He was one of the biggest reasons for the surge of Justin Herbert, you know, from what we saw from him this past year. So bringing in your rookie quarterback, whether it be Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, maybe even Trey Lance at 2, but you get to pick your guy, and you have him with a great quarterbacks coach in Pep Hamilton, who did great things with Justin Herbert. So I think it might be wise to, while you have the value of Deshaun Watson, before it gets ugly over the summer, cut your losses, get great value out of him, get your quarterback of the future, and have him work with Pep Hamilton. It'll help you in the cap situation in the long run because you don't have to pay that big contract to Deshaun Watson, which is well worth it. But if he's not going to be happy there, it makes sense. And then you did good things with the cap already this offseason. So moving forward now with a rookie quarterback, you got that 5-year clock on that rookie deal. You can start to rebuild, and maybe by the end of that rookie contract, they can be back. And that's me giving them the benefit of the doubt, which they probably don't deserve.
No, I agree. I think trading Deshaun Watson has to be the plan because, in a sense, if you don't trade him, he's going to be unhappy. And it's trade Deshaun Watson. I think the Jets and the Dolphins offer up in Denver in that order. Now, I would say probably Miami, Jets, Broncos offer up the best deals. I think if you can get Miami's 2 first-round picks, that would be great. I think the Jets, like Jack just said, you can get their 2 first-round picks. That would be great, too. I think this offseason really needs to be focused on just a plan. I think they have to develop what they want to be in the future, how they're going to move in the future, what type of organization they want to be, because the way they're handling this Deshaun Watson situation isn't going to help them in free agency for years to come. I think they're going to be a bad team going forward, and I think if they handle this Deshaun Watson situation wrong, free agents aren't going to want to come there, which in turn is going to make them a bad team. So I think getting free agents is cool. Like Trent Murphy was a good one, filling up the holes, bringing back Will Fuller. Like we talked about before, Brandon Cooks is probably going to be gone, so it's probably just going to be Will Fuller out there with maybe a couple rookies in the 3rd or 4th round. But I think just developing a plan and developing a solid game plan for the future is going to be the key for them, and it starts with trading Deshaun Watson.
See, I disagree with both of you guys. My offseason is based on surrounding Deshaun Watson. With $28 million in cap space, I think they can do exactly that. And based on this offseason is going to really determine if Deshaun Watson wants to stay or wants to go. There is, right now, like, Deshaun Watson, everybody's talking about him getting traded, but I don't think the Texans are going to trade him. I really don't believe that. They're either going to not trade him and cut their losses, or they're going to let him decide if he wants to come back. And because he hasn't made that much money yet, I don't think he's going to pass up on generational wealth by sitting out a year. So when we talk about the offensive side of the football, getting an offensive line, Joe Thuney, Nick Caserio came from the Patriots. Joe Thuney is a guy that you can target. You look at Marvin Jones. The Texans' current wide receiver coach is Robert Prince. He worked alongside Marvin Jones in Detroit. So that's already a connection right there. And then you look at tight ends. You can go Robert Tonyan, Richard Rodgers, Trey Burton, Gerald Everett, or Jacob Hollister. I think they can go with a guy like Gerald Everett and draft targets. Even though they don't have a 1st or 2nd round pick, you can get Quinn Manners in the 3rd round. They have a high 3rd round pick. Sean Wade could fall to the 3rd or 4th. Elijah Moore. And those are the guys that they can target with those later round picks, in my opinion, who are the best available guys. Like, with my dream offseason of the Texans, this is how their offense looks. They have Deshaun Watson, Duke Johnson is there, Will Fuller is there, Randall Cobb, Marvin Jones Jr. They signed Gerald Everett. They still have Laramie Tunsil. They have Nick Martin, who's a whatever center, Titus Howard, who's still a developing tackle, Max Sharping, who he's not that good, but they signed Joe Thuney. So you have 2 guys in Joe Thuney and Laramie Tunsil who are Pro Bowl level offensive linemen. And then on the defensive line, you signed Whitney Merciless is there, but since they're transitioning to a 4-3, he slides to defensive end, and I think that fits him better because he's lost his athleticism to play outside linebacker. Then you get a guy like Adam Butler from the Patriots. There's a connection there. Gerald McCoy, he played under Lovie Smith in Tampa Bay, and McCoy is looking to return after being injured for a year when he signed with Dallas. Gerald McCoy can be a guy who can revive his career in Houston. Then you can also get a guy like Derek Wolfe to be that other defensive end, or William Golston. William Golston last year or 2 years ago for Tampa Bay was pretty good. He played under Lovie Smith as well. Because Tampa Bay is so stacked, William Golston didn't play much this past season, but he can be a guy that goes to the Texans. And then at linebacker, Bernardrick McKinney's good. Zach Cunningham is good. Devondre Campbell can fill that other outside linebacker hole, and he's a good cover guy. And then in the secondary, you can have Bradley Roby, Garyon Conley, Lonnie Johnson Jr., who I think is a pretty good safety, Eric Reed, who's a Pro Bowl safety, and they need a slot. And I think that slot they can bring in is Mike Hilton from the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I don't think the Steelers signed back Mike Hilton. So all in all, I think with this offseason, getting Joe Thuney, getting Marvin Jones, getting Gerald Everett, getting Mike Hilton, getting Derek Wolfe, like, I think this is a pretty good building block. Next year, they get their picks back, and they can have even more cap space to make more moves. So this is a realistic offseason based on the cap that they freed up from cutting J.J. Watt, and also would cut Brandon Cooks and would cut David Johnson.
Yeah, and listen, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but if they are able to convince Deshaun Watson to stay, that's an offseason that they did a great job clearing up cap room in a situation that, well, they haven't done it yet, but they can do a great job clearing up even more cap room moving forward this offseason to be maybe not a playoff team next year because the division is tough, but they could be on that borderline, definitely much improved.
With Deshaun Watson,
year.
they can
Anything's
be.
possible. They
With Deshaun Watson, they can
Would
be.
you think that's good enough for him to maybe stay?
If they get a lineman like Joe Thuney and they have Marvin Jones there,
because I think his problems is with more of the front office than.
I think the problems are with the front office, but if the Texans try and have a very good offseason with some good signings, and Deshaun Watson is getting fined by not showing up,
right,
and he's losing out on his money, he's eventually going to have to make the decision of whether I'm going to sit out, whether I'm going to retire, or I'm going to play.
Yeah.
Because at that point, the Texans are like, you either retire or you play. We're not going to give you any options. These are your two choices. And that's the ultimatum that Deshaun Watson is going to pick. And if I was in that situation, I'd play.
Well,
and I think Deshaun Watson, who hasn't made generational money yet, he has a decision to make whether he wants to be a part of a revolutionary movement or he wants to get paid. And a lot of guys just want to get paid. So because of that he could be back with the Texans, and we'll just see what happens. But this is all on the Texans. I think, you mentioned a good point about trading Deshaun Watson and getting all those picks back. The thing about it is that even Pep Hamilton, as good as his track record has been, there is no telling that he can develop another quarterback, or that quarterback, Zach Wilson or whoever they draft, is going to be a great QB.
That's true.
You got a guy in Deshaun Watson who's a top 3 QB already. And even if those quarterbacks are good, you don't win Super Bowls in the NFL by just having a good quarterback. You win by having a superstar guy, which is why Tampa Bay won this past season with Tom Brady, because he's a superstar guy. You'll win with great QBs. There are very few teams who have won without having a great QB.
Yeah, no, my only question and the reason I went the trade route for them is just because I don't know if personally, like on a personal level, I don't know if there's anything they could do on the field to heal the wounds that happened from what we've seen off the field this season with not only them not giving him input, because I don't think that was the biggest problem. I think it was them telling him he would have input and then making the hirings without even consulting him. So I just wonder if that disrespect hasn't gone too far for the wounds.
I think just with the front office being extremely stubborn and feeling like they have too much power, it's just looking like a bad apple right now. But everything you said, you should be the GM for the Texans. That was good. That was good moves there. Now everything you said, if he does stay, it sounds like they could definitely be a competitive. I mean, they were competitive last year. They lost a lot of close games, so they were a good team last year. And I think with all those pieces you just named, they can be even better than they were last year. But like I said, I'm just judging off the base that I think Deshaun Watson is going to go, and I think he should go. But those are good moves.
I mean, if they do trade Deshaun Watson and that quarterback and Zach Wilson or Fields ends up becoming a great QB, then they'll be in perfect position to contend as well. So you can go either way. But I'm just under the assumption that, like, if I was the Texans, I'd much rather do my best this offseason to show Deshaun Watson, look, we got these guys. They're going to help you win. And even if Deshaun Watson says, I don't care and wants to get traded, now all you're going to do is surround your rookie QB with a lot of great pieces as well. I mean, Marvin Jones, that connection with the Robert Prince is a very real one. Joe Thuney, coming from the Patriots. Nick Caserio, coming from the Patriots. There's a really real connection. So there's a lot of connections there. And if the Texans are going to sign one big free agent, it has to be an offensive lineman. It has to be Joe Thuney. It has to be to protect Deshaun Watson. And that's all I think Deshaun Watson really wants, to be surrounded with a team that he feels like he can win with.
Yeah, listen, if you keep a guy like that, you keep a guy like that. There's no question about it at whatever cost necessary. So if they can, they should, but I'd question that they can at this point.